Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and today I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the Blue Moon Shawl, which is a free pattern you'll find on both yarnspirations.com and on mooglyblog.com as the Fall Crochet Along for 2021. To make this pattern, you'll need 2 Caron Big Donut Ogos. I used the Blue Moon colorway, which inspired the name. You'll also need a US K-hook, which is a 6.5 millimeter one. And of course, you'll need your usual crochet supplies, a yarn needle, stitch markers, and scissors. In this video, I will be demonstrating how to crochet section 10, which is the final round of edging for the Blue Moon Shawl. You can see here I've used our darkest blue along the sides of the shawl, but then, since it is our edging, if we come all the way over here, you can see when I worked evenly across the top, I did switch to matching colors. So as you work that final bit of the edging across the straight top of your shawl, you can go ahead and switch to a matching color for that section using all the little bits that we've set aside after we finish each color section, or you can continue to use whichever color you prefer. So for our 54th round, I'm going to be using color E. This is the last color that comes on the Blue Moon colorway, but of course you can use whichever color you prefer. And as noted, we'll be joining to the first stitch of the previous row. We did not turn at the end of row 53. So we're going to join to the first stitch of row 53 to make the first stitch of row or round 54. So just as before, as we've been doing all along, I'm going to go ahead and join with a slip stitch and chain 1. There we are. Then I am going to work a single crochet in the first stitch. Now, we don't necessarily need to mark our stitches for this round. First of all, I'm using a different color, so I'm definitely going to know when I come back to that stitch. But I'm also not going to be turning back and working around into this stitch again. So if you'd like to go ahead and mark this one, you can, but it's totally optional. After that, we work 5 single crochets in the next chain space. Remember, we had that chain 4 right there? So we're going to work 5 single crochets right in that chain space. Don't have to work into any of those particular chains, just right into this space here. So there's 4 and 5. There we are. And with that, we can begin the section that starts with the asterisk in the written pattern. We skip 2 single crochets and 5 single crochets in the next chain space, and repeat that until we get to the single crochet before the marked chain space. So basically, all we need to do, skip those 2 and work 5 single crochets in the next chain space. So keep that up until we get to that marked center, and I will see you at the center of row 54. Okay, so basically we work 5 single crochets in each of those chain 4s until we get right up here to our marked chain space. We've got 1 single crochet, and then we've got our marked chain space. So we're going to skip over that single crochet, and then in the marked chain space, we're going to work 2 single crochets, 1, 2, then chain 2, and then 2 more single crochets back in here. Now, normally we would have marked that chain 2, but this is the last round, so we don't need to worry about finding that center again. So we just go right back in that same chain space there for 2 more single crochets, and that is it for the center. Then we simply work our way back up the same way that we worked our way down. 5 single crochets in each chain 4 space until you get to the end, and I'll see you there. Okay, so as we come across here for the second side for our final round, we've got our 5 single crochets in each of those chain 4 spaces, and then we finish up with a single crochet in that very last stitch from the previous row. So I'm going to go ahead and get that stitch marker on out of the way. And before, we would have gone ahead and broken our yarn here and switched to the next section. But we're going to stay in this section, but we are going to go ahead and break off our yarn here. Unless, of course, you want to keep going with the same color for your top edge. That is up to you. But I'm going to go ahead and break it now because I'm going to be switching, and it's a little easier to go ahead and get that out of the way. So now what I want to do is I want to bring in that next color because we're going to be turning and working across the top of the shawl, right along the sides of those rows. And I want to go ahead and match up as I work across each of those sections. Again, if you prefer to do this in a solid color, you totally can. It's up to you and whatever look you want in your finished shawl. So the next thing we do is chain 2. So rather than finishing off the previous color, I'm just going to kind of hold that loop nice and tight and then go right to the second color for my chain 2. 1, kind of have to be careful with those ends so you don't pull them out, and 2, like so. And then you can go ahead and weave those ends in at the end, but I like to go ahead and just give them a little tug here and pull them out of the way for now. I might even hold on to them here as I get started working across the top of the shawl. So now what I want to do is just work evenly across the top of the shawl. There's not a specific number of stitches we need or anything like this. It's just a pretty border edging. So whatever you like. But what I like to do is as I start working across the top here, I will do a single crochet and then chain one before I find where I want to put that next single crochet. Now, I know this right here is a chain of 3, which counts as a double crochet. So I'll put a stitch in there and then chain one and then a second stitch in there, because on the side of a double crochet, I usually like to work 2 single crochets. But by working these chain ones in between each of these stitches, and you can see here, I've come to the last stitch in the side of this color. So at this point now, with these 2 loops pulled up, I would switch to the next color. But by putting those chain ones in between, it gives you a little bit more leeway. And it also creates a really nice, I don't want to say a frilly edge, but a little bit more interest. It's not completely straight. It's got some movement, some very intentional movement. But like I say, it makes this edge just a little bit more forgiving. Just a better look, I find, overall. If you prefer not to do the chain one in between your single crochets and just work it straight across, you can do that. But I really like the way the chain one edging for this adds a little bit more flexibility. But like I say, if we're going to keep changing colors, then it's time right here to change to this next color. So this right here with these 2 loops left on my hook is where I would bring up the remainder of that next color, the little bits and bobs left over as we made each section, and then finish that stitch with the next color there. There we are. Then I would chain one, pull these ends back a little bit, and then start working into the sides of these rows with the matching color. Single crochet, chain one, single crochet, chain one, all the way across, switching colors as you go. And of course, as you finish each section, you can go ahead and cut that yarn off so you don't have to have more things attached all at once. You can have 1, maximum 2 yarns attached at a time. Makes it a little bit easier to work your way across, but you basically just want to work evenly across the top of the shawl until you've reached the end, and then you can join to that first stitch of color E, and you're all set for your Blue Moon Shawl. So after you've woven in all the ends for your Blue Moon Shawl, it is a good idea to go ahead and block this one. You can do this a couple of different ways. You can get it wet and then lay it out flat to dry, the same way you would a fine sweater. You could use pins to pin it out and give it a little bit more shape if you like, or you can pin it out, give it a squirt with a spray bottle, then it doesn't get as soaked, or you could even use a steamer. Just be careful, since this is acrylic yarn, that you don't actually melt the yarn. It's great to relax it a little bit, but we don't want to turn it into a solid melty chunk. So whichever blocking method you choose, this shawl will benefit from it, and I think all of those would work really beautifully. But here you can see that finished edge where I've switched colors all along, making sure to put those chain ones in between, and I think it gave it a really lovely edge. But again, you can edge it up however you'd like for your own custom shawl. And that's the final section of the Blue Moon Shawl. Thanks so much for following along with this beautiful shawl pattern, and I hope you've enjoyed making it. Be sure to try out more Caron Big Donut Ogo. They come in a variety of beautiful colors, and thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.